Hey everyone, this is Kieran. Today's exercise is looking at how to stretch your lower back, particularly into flexion, so the ability for your spine to bend forward. So if you've got some tightness back there, then you might find that this is a nice stretch to either help relieve some of that tightness or improve your range of motion. So keeping things fairly brief today, when you have a restriction into a range of motion, typically it's going to be some muscles not wanting to lengthen, so we could call it like an extensibility issue. That could be for a number of reasons. It could be that the muscles are protecting something, so maybe there's some inflammation going on from a local injury. Maybe you've had a joint injury in the past. Maybe there's some apprehension or fear around movement. You're concerned that if you go that way, that you might hurt yourself. So your body creates extra tension in the muscle. I think it's important to point out though that tightness or feeling of tension doesn't always mean short. And so someone could have good extensibility or lengthening capacity of their muscles, but it could still feel tight. It could even feel tight at rest. Because that tightness is more a perception of stretch. And that perception of stretch or length can sometimes be a bit inaccurate. Or over time, what would be considered like your baseline or your starting point changes as well based on habits and behaviors and previous injury history. So that's kind of the active side of things. Passively, you've also got potential for joint injuries. Some of these are acute, so you might twist and sprain a joint, or you might have a more traumatic injury where components of the joint have been injured, like the joint capsule or ligaments around it, or even sometimes the articular cartilage around the bone ends. Others have more age-related changes, so you might see osteoarthritis develop, or if someone has other inflammatory arthritic changes over time. And so what you then see is the shape of the joint has changed a bit and its ability to move around has become less. It doesn't mean though that the range you have is set in stone. So yes, if you've had some changes to your joint and the structure itself can't move like what it used to move, you likely won't get the same range back that you used to have, but you can still improve range typically. And some of that is reducing some of the protection around it. Some of it's through some strengthening, particularly in lengthened positions. And these things will help with just restoring a range of motion that feels safe and usable. And safe is, I think, a relative term. It's a self-perceived thing. Everyone has different thresholds for what is risky in life. It also comes down to your previous experience with what you're doing. So if you're going back to a familiar task, then you have a good risk analysis of what's going on. If it's an unfamiliar task, you might need to learn some skills and spend time developing an awareness of, the spectrums of what that task can be. So just some ideas around stretching. I like to always start these videos with just some general concepts, but the specific exercise that you're here for. So in a chair or anything where you can sit is a nice place to be for this stretch. I'm just going to go side on to start. So with flexion, we're thinking about your lower back. Now your lower back is actually from, we call it sort of L1, T12, or your 12th rib, down to your gluteal fold. So it does include like the posterior hip area. At least in research, that's the definition. So we're talking about sort of this area to this area. So we want to see that area, those two endpoints get further away from each other. Versus if I was extending, going this direction, those two endpoints would be getting closer together. Right? So by sitting here, I'm already in hip flexion, so I've lengthened the hip aspect. Now, for a lot of people with stretching the lower back, they get a little bit stuck after the laying on their back versions, where they might pull their knees to their chest, or I'll maybe link up, I'm not sure I've got on my channel off the top of my head, but I'll link up some other videos I've done. After that, you want to increase the load. Now you could go to a standing version where you go and touch your toes, but that's not always, people aren't always ready for that jump. And it's not to say that you shouldn't give it a go. If it's tolerable, keep going. But if it's not tolerable, if you deload the situation, that tends to get people feeling like they can just bridge that gap a bit. So simply, just show you side on, then I'll show you on the front. I'm just playing around with this mic on the side, it keeps catching. You're just gonna go forward like this. Now, you may not be ready to go this far, and everyone's gonna have different ranges based on, you know, even your torso. Like if my torso was longer, I'd get closer to the ground, right? So you're hanging out. Now, if that feels like too much, the beauty of this is you can use your hands to deload. So if I use my hands as I go down, so I'm bracing on my knees, like this, and then maybe I bring a hand down to the ground, so I'm still taking some weight through my hands, and then over time, what I can do is take less weight through my hands, and then I can just really try and stretch this area out. Just to give you guys the front on view, you will have to go a little bit wider. If you go really narrow, obviously your legs are in the way. You might get a bit of a stretch doing just that, but if you need to go beyond that, then you gotta go wider, and then you gotta go down, 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 and this is where I maybe use the hands again. Once you're feeling like you're ready for a little bit of overpressure, you can hook the hands behind here, and then I can pull myself down further into the stretch as well. And what can make stretches be a little bit more effective sounds obvious, but we're trying to relax into the stretch a little bit. So do try to breathe. If you can't breathe, then you're going to be holding some extra tension as well. If you're going to be stretching regularly, we know that around 30-second reps, 3 to 5 sets, 5 days a week seems to improve your range. And then you also see a similar range increase if you do, say, 3 sets of 3 sets of 60 seconds, you know, a couple times a week. Seems to be a similar range increase. There's lots of methods around stretching. This isn't the only way to do it, but it's a way that is nice in the early stages of a back injury where you're past the real painful stage and you're looking to start to restore some range of motion. So give this a go, play around with some of the prescriptions, see what works for you, use your hands to deload, and then you can use your hands to overload as well. And then when you're ready, you can pop into, like, say, the Jefferson type curls, which I'll put up here. They might be a little bit more specialized, and not specialized as such, but not everyone might have an interest in going to that level. But ultimately you do want to be able to bend down, put your shoes on, touch your toes, those kinds of things. So if you've got any questions, please ask below. Otherwise, all the best with this. If you like this video, then please hit like below. Otherwise, to check out more of our content in the future, you can subscribe to our channel by clicking our logo over here. And to check out our latest video, click up here.